So it's like a year ago when Neil Johnson and I did a similar thing for Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even look at the date when I watched it.
I think it was like a year.
Yeah.
But even
you guys, neither of you age at all. So it's hard to, to know when these things were recorded. Yeah.
they all look like they were 50 years ago.
Right.
And Neil and I, even back then, we were talking about what film were we going to do next. And I'm going to do Alien at some point. And I was torn between the first Alien, Blade Runner, I knew I was going to do, Superman the movie. So I want to do these like real iconic movies that people will still be watching in 10, 20 years. So we're not going to do it on Flight Risk. So that's not going to happen. And who better to do a Blade Runner with than you? Because
man,
love the movie.
It is one of those. And you know what? I need my desk and camera set up like this, but directly behind the camera is the poster that you gave me. So, man.
It's a cool looking poster.
It really is. I guess I could flip the camera and
I will. I think I've probably got a photo of it somewhere. I'm going to insert all sorts of clips.
Cool, man.
And photos and everything. A bit like the Close Encounters one was.
Yeah, man. That was good, dude. And if you need me to do any pickup shots for you, like, set up the camera and just go through some of these magazines and whatever, or any of the other collectibles, man, I'd be glad to send you that footage. So,
possibly.
So back when we were kids, how did you find out that there was something called Blade Runner and it had Harrison Ford in it? Which, by the way, I'm wearing this shirt. Man, because
Deckard, Indian Han. Yep.
Yeah, man. The three iconic Han Solo, Harrison Ford roles.
No, Henry from Regarding Henry.
No.
He's in the back of the T-shirt.
What was the one noisy chick that they crash landed on an island and they were stuck together?
6 days, 7 nights. I can't remember his character name, but I enjoyed that film. Or the Harrison from Shrinking. Paul. That would be good.
Yep.
So he's got a new T-shirt with Paul and some of his wonderful slogans. But I was born in 71, Blade Runner 82. America got it in June. We got it in September. This was back when there was a few months.
Same year, though, right?
Same year, which was quite nice. Often it's the year after.
Right.
And I think I started seeing the still images in like Starburst magazine or Starlog or something like that. And I remember the main image that I saw is the iconic, pretty much every shot in the film is iconic as far as I'm concerned, but it's the one when he's hanging off the thing at the end and, just before Roy picks him up and puts that shot. And I just remember seeing that. And I think I saw some of the cityscape shots. And that's all it was. So these weren't obviously video shots. These were photos. And I'm like, what is that film? What's and I knew who Harrison Ford was because I'd seen Empire Strikes Back. I'd seen, I think, Force 10 from Navarone had been out then.
That's right, man.
Star Wars I'd obviously seen. So
Indiana Jones. Yeah.
Indiana Jones. I'd seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, but I might not have done because I didn't see that at the cinema in 81. I would have seen that when it hit rental VHS, which probably would have been 82. So there is a possibility that I would have seen Raiders around the same time as I saw Blade Runner, even though there was like a year difference or whatever. So it was just photos in magazines that sparked my curiosity. And what have you got there? Nice.
Monsters. Sorry, man. I'm just excited to share. But it's interesting in that you've got a bunch of shots that were just, I don't remember this being in the movie.
No, I don't either.
I think this was to be Tyrell because that was another shot that wasn't used when you find out that he was the replicant, that Roy killed the replicant, and the real Tyrell was up in his bedchamber in some sort of a box and being kept alive. So
was that real? Is that a genuine thing? Where did that come about? I don't remember watching. I've watched the film twice this week. I don't remember that being mentioned.
It's never made it. Somebody said that it was never filmed, and then somebody else said that it was, and then it wasn't used and lost like Tears in the Rain, and
which I found out was Rutger Hauer's improv. That whole thing, the Tears in Rain, he did that. He came up with it. He also came up with the idea of releasing the dove. That was his idea.
Yeah.
Because I've listened to, I think, 3 commentaries this week for Blade Runner. So I have the DVD set that's got the 5 different versions in it.
Yep.
And so I listened to the commentary for the work print, which is pretty good because that points out all the differences. There's like 100 differences between the work print and the theatrical version and the final cut. There's a lot. And Rutger Hauer's idea to grab a dove and then release it, hence signifying his soul when he passed away.
Yeah. Which, it's interesting. I thought today that the fact that in the movie, we are supposed to ponder what is human. More human than human was their motto. But I mean, when we're talking AI, and if AI is sentient, does it have a soul? And so that's one of the things that I mean, like way back then, it was all sci-fi. Now we're living in fiction come reality. So that was another picture of Harrison Ford. I see that there is a glare. So anyway, but so that was another one of the starter things where I had no idea what it was about, but there he is looking pretty cool with a cool gun by his side. And random note, these magazines are the coolest to go back through because you think of all the iconic movies that are still, I mean, now they're classics, but I mean, Star Wars, The Thing, a bunch of horror movies and stuff. And it's all chronicled in there. We grew up in the golden age of cinema. Yeah. Yep.
And in 1982 was a pretty special year for film. I'm going to go through some of the other films that came out that year, and some of the films are the reason Blade Runner didn't make a fortune, I think. One hell of a year. But when did you first become aware? Was it magazines like the ones you've just
magazines? But it was rated R, and for whatever reason, there were other movies that I like that were more scandalous that I would sneak into as a kid. I'd say, hey, I want to go see that Disney movie. And then I would go see whatever R-rated movie I wanted. And I don't know if it didn't come through Albemarle or if it was just one of the, I don't know. But for whatever reason, I didn't see it in the theater. So the first time I saw it was in, oh my gosh, I even did the math for you. But anyway, it was, gosh, man, it must have been like 84. So it was like 2 years after it had been out. And I worked really hard for 2 summers and bought a VCR, which, most of the viewing audience probably doesn't know what that thing is. But I rented Blade Runner, and I didn't have a very big TV in my room. So I came down to the basement where we had a big like console TV, which I was not about to lug upstairs, and brought my stereo down, had some big speakers, and my parents probably didn't appreciate it, but they left me alone. But I started the movie like at 11, and it was so immersive, man. With the eye and the flames and the dystopian future and Vangelis playing, and man, it was, I mean, it's one of the movies that continues to inspire me. How about you? When did you see it?
We both would have watched it in a pan and scan 4.3 ratio as well, which, because people, widescreen wasn't really a thing in home viewing until the late 80s, maybe around 1990, because I remember Fox doing this whole big marketing campaign. You think you've seen it all.
Right.
Whoops, just nearly knocked the spotlight over. And they did Die Hard, Alien. I can't remember, there was like 5 of them where they had these Fox titles that were coming out of widescreen. So until then, it was the pan and scan. Yeah, and we didn't know any different, and we were fine with it. Nowadays, people would lose their minds, and the social media thing would explode. But I think I probably would have seen it around 83 when the home release came, because I had an elder brother who was about 7 years, I'm guessing 7 years older than I am, and he was heavily into sci-fi. So a lot of the films that I was taken to the cinema to see, like Star Trek the Motion Picture and Star Wars and stuff like that, and Meteor, he went to see them, and I was tagging along to watch them. So that's how I ended up becoming sort of engrossed in this sci-fi thing. And so he would have rented Blade Runner, and I would have seen it in the house. So I'm guessing around 1983. But as a kid, I didn't like it.
Yeah,
because it's an adult sci-fi film. It's not Star Wars. It's not a science fiction version of Raiders. It's not Battle Beyond the Stars. It's a proper adult, thinky, emotional sci-fi film that just looks amazing.
Yeah. Which, as my kids have said, it is slow paced. Yeah. Which back in the day we didn't need things so fast. But the director's cut, wherever the final cut that was done, that was the one I showed my kids, which I felt like the scene with Rachel and Deckard was much less rapey by the final cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. But I didn't. I didn't watch Blade Runner as a kid and hate it. I'm just like, okay, I don't really get it. I don't really know what's going on. It ain't Star Wars. I'll go watch Empire Strikes Back or something like that. I'll watch the Beastmaster again. And then Blade Runner, even over the years, we're talking like through the 80s and into the 90s, I would never have put Blade Runner in my top 50, but yet every time I would watch it, and why am I watching a film that I wasn't a huge fan of? Who knows?
Right.
It would always make me think, and I'm like, you know what? I think I might like that film. It's not great. I don't need to watch it again. And then 6 months later, I would go, do you know what? I'm in the mood to watch. I'm in the mood to watch Blade Runner again. And it just keeps dragging. Over those years, I've seen it hundreds of now. I do love the film. Yeah. And it is alongside Alien, which obviously is another Ridley Scott film. Every time I watch those films, I'm stunned at how good they look, even though they are old films now. Yeah. They look better than Avatar. All sorts of stuff. They really do hold up. And obviously that's probably because of the practical effects. And Ridley Scott has got to take a lot of credit for that, because it's not a coincidence that Alien and Blade Runner, both amazing films that hold up, just so happen to be made by the same guy.
Yeah. Well, and I think he knew how to stretch his budget. And I watched some interview at some point where, he said that, somebody was questioning why is it only at night? Well, because at night you don't see the tops of the buildings, which I couldn't afford to change. And so, it's a very wise filmmaker. I don't know why I liked it from the get-go, other than I guess it just took me to a whole new world. Like Star Wars certainly did that. But this was a beautiful dystopian future. And it just, I guess it just had so much coolness in there. And, but yeah, I've seen it. I think I've probably seen almost every version of it. And I don't know that I saw the fan cut that made it onto I think what might be this in your background.
Wow. You've got the briefcase one. Yeah. I've got the tin box.
Oh, gotcha, man. Well, and this one is HD DVD, because I was like, you know what? I'm rooting for the underdog, because Sony, could buy out anybody. So, but this has so much coolness in there. And then, of course, I've got the Blu-ray version too. It's not in a tin box. It's in a plastic Amory case. So.
Now, the Blu-ray, has it got the 5 different versions and all the extras and stuff in it?
Yep, it does. Nice. Now, it doesn't have. Let's see here if I can get this thing to.
Has it got this? Has it got one of these in? Look, let's see how that works.
Yeah,
you got one of those. Man.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm not even going to pull that out. Did you get all the artwork?
Yes, all here.
Yep. Oh, nice, man.
So I've got all of that. Yeah.
And then let's see here. There was also the
I didn't get that in it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it is just plastic. And then there's the limited edition spinner, and the doors actually do open up. So
that is amazing. Man. I didn't get that either.
Yeah. And it's cool, man. You can even see how they saw, below them with the open window design and stuff. And yeah, man. It it was and here's Here's the good old red box that we don't have anymore.
I do remember those.
Yeah. It is kind of funny that I bought the HD DVD player that connected to the Xbox. And now it is a doorstop out there in where I keep a lot of the stuff that I don't display in my office. So yeah.
But I think Blade Runner, I own 3 sets of it. So I've got the 5 edition box, the tin box set. I have a 2-disc Blu-ray set downstairs, but I also have Blade Runner in 4K as part of the big Warner Brothers box set. So I guess I think it's in a tie between that and Oliver Stone's Alexander as to which I own the most versions of. I suppose Blade Runner, because there's 5 in one. In one box set. But
what's a good thing we're not comparing Terminator 2 copies, because I think
I've got one.
Yeah, I think I've easily started with VHS, and then I had multiple DVDs and Blu-ray copies, and
everything.
Yeah.
But I'm still stunned as to why I'm not stunned why I like Blade Runner, but just that many times over the years I've watched it and go, but I love it. But I just keep going back to it. I sat down yesterday and watched the film back to back twice, but just different versions. I watched and we'll get on to which version is your favorite, but I watched the international theatrical version, followed by the director's cut. And then I was going to watch the final cut again, but I don't know if I've got issues with the final cut, though. I guess we'll talk about that in this. I have a similar issue with the final cut as I do with the special editions of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the final cut isn't stupidly CGI heavy. There's no musical numbers, but there is some CGI tinkering with the Joanna Cassidy running through the glass and facial replacement and stuff.
Yeah.
And
how do you feel about that, man?
I think it's fine, but if I'm going to show somebody Blade Runner, I think I'm probably going to show them the theatrical cut.
Yeah,
because the facial replacement stuff is from 2007.
Yeah,
it's not from 1982. And I often go back to a film and go, I want to watch the one that I would have seen in 1982 just so I can be crazy impressed with that one. But the changes that they've done in the final cut aren't huge.
Yeah.
Like they were in Return of the Jedi or Star Wars. There's no like multiple dewbacks kicking around in the desert and all that silliness.
Right. Now they're hairless lizards. Yeah.
It's a very respectful update, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it was truly, instead of, because I think that like in the, as far as Star Wars is concerned, it's like it goes beyond what he had in mind. It's like, look at what I can do. And that's no knock on George Lucas. But when it comes to Ridley Scott and what he did in the final cut, I think it's just like, if there was one thing that he wished he could have done, it probably would have been the Joanna Cassidy, it not looking like, and it was at least a stunt woman. You know how things were back in the 70s, where it could be some dude in a wig.
It's not like Flashdance, is it? Where it's actually, hang on a minute, that's a guy. What's going on?
Yep. Yeah, but it's I don't know, man. Where do we start, man? This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's been a rite of passage for my kids. As far as once they got old enough, then I wanted them to watch it. And same thing with John Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, it's a plethora of little movies.
Same year, 1982. It's the year of E.T. Wow. You got Blade Runner, E.T. and The Thing in the same year, same summer. To be fair, that's just
wow. And from what I understand about Blade Runner, when it came out, it was the audiences didn't really know what to think about it. And so it was a flop to begin with. And then it got moved to a midnight movie where I guess the more, I don't know, sci-fi minded individuals, those that can't sleep or whatever. And that's where it picked up traction and continued to grow until more and more people saw it.
Well, it did. I looked at it, and obviously people do say, it was a flop, blah, blah, blah. Who decides what a flop is now? It was the 27th biggest film of 1982.
Really?
So 27 isn't
How
bad.
many were released in total, though?
I would probably say a few hundred, maybe a few thousand. I mean, nothing compared to what's released nowadays.
Yeah.
But it made more money than Airplane 2, the sequel, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Mad Max: The Road Warrior made more money than that. Pink Floyd: The Wall. It made $7 million more than The Thing.
Yeah.
And then we had a whole bunch of stuff. It made $11 million more than Death Wish 2 and $12 million more than Grease 2. So it was the 27th biggest film. It was beaten by films only by a couple of million. Sophie's Choice, World According to Garp, Friday the 13th Part 3 only made about $7 million more than it. The Dark Crystal, $43 million that did. I thought that would have been a bigger flop because people always talk about it as a financial disaster.
Yeah.
But it's not. Clint Eastwood's Firefox did $46 million. And we get things like Rambo First Blood. This is all in the same year. This is crazy. Rambo First Blood, Gandhi, Annie, Poltergeist, 48 Hours, Star Trek 2, Porky's, Rocky 3, Officer and a Gentleman, Tootsie, and E.T. at number 1 with $359 million, which pretty much gobbled up absolutely everything in that summer. And then it got me thinking, well, okay, E.T. was in theaters for months. I don't know what it's like in America, but it certainly was over here.
Oh, yeah. Huge success.
Because cinemas would keep a film in as long as it was making money, and E.T. was making killing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many screens the theaters had where you were, but the one in my town had 3 screens.
Yeah.
So one of those would have been E.T. all summer, probably right through till Christmas, and probably even beyond that. Yeah. I don't know what the other screen would have been, but they were all the smaller screens. So one was the biggest, then it was 2 and 3, and then that was it. So Blade Runner probably didn't last very long in the theaters, I would have thought.
Yeah.
When you go through some of those films that came out.
Yeah. Well, and, I was looking at the trailer, supposedly the original trailer, and I don't know that would have gotten me to go see it. I mean, and even the, what was it, the 20th anniversary trailer, it was, I mean, like, why would I want to go see this movie? This is ridiculous. But it was, so I think if someone could have done a better trailer for it, maybe that would have helped some. But I mean, by the time the 20th anniversary, I mean, word was out, it was really good. So people, I don't think, I mean, it was kind of like a casual reminder at that point.
I mean, I wasn't quite old enough to go to the cinema to watch it, but I think the only thing that would have got me to go see it would have been Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott, I wasn't familiar with Ridley Scott's name. I probably knew Alien, but, when I'm an 11, 12-year-old kid, I'm not like, oh, who directed the such and such? I wasn't quite at that point yet. However, with Harrison Ford, it would have been Indiana Jones, Han Solo. I'll go watch that. The title Blade Runner, it doesn't explain what it is. Jaws, shark. I know what it is.
Right.
Star Wars, space, stars, wars, done.
Right.
Blade Runner.
Right. It could have been an ice skating movie for all we knew, right?
It could well have been. And it was originally going to be called Dangerous Days, which I don't know if that would have been a better title, which is why they called the making of Dangerous Days, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I didn't know.
Yeah. At what point, this is just a little sidebar, at what point did you start noticing, like, wow, I like this movie, it is because of this director, and then you started looking at other movies because it was the director? Because, I mean, I think all of us, we would see, like, have a star that we thought, wow, that's, he or she is an excellent actor. I want to go see more stuff with them in it. But at what point did you notice that it was, I mean, like, you can follow directors too and make some good choices with movies?
I mean, I was already following Spielberg by, Close Encounters and Jaws. And so the early 80s, I was following him as a director. George Lucas, to a certain extent, even though he didn't do Empire and Jedi, I'm like, I know him, I'll follow him.
Yeah.
It probably would have been, I think for Ridley, it would have been the mid to late 80s. I remember going into the video store and looking at the cover of Black Rain. And I recognized Michael Douglas from Fatal Attraction. But I'm like, oh, Ridley Scott, I like what he does. So I would have probably been about 17, 18 years old. So, but that probably around that time I'd started. Although, to be fair, I watched Platoon because it's in Salvador, and I was an Oliver Stone fan, and that was 1986, so I was 15. So probably 15, 16, 17, that type of thing. What about yourself?
I think probably Spielberg was my first director that I was like, I liked that vibe. And I think that was what misled a lot of people in Poltergeist, thinking that he must have directed when it wasn't him. But and Hooper did a good job, man. But there's so many Spielbergian moments that you just think that, I mean, and who knows, maybe Spielberg was like, you need to do it this way. I don't know, man.
Spielberg the Jedi.
Yeah, man. I was trying to think certainly Tony Scott eventually between Aliens and Blade Runner.
I think Tony Scott for me was he'd done Top Gun. He did Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Did I say Tony or Ridley Scott?
I think you said Tony Scott. It would have been the sort of double header of Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop 2. Right, now I'm on board the Tony Scott train. And it was probably a few years after that I found out he was Ridley's brother. I didn't really connect.
I think I found Tony because of Ridley. I think I was like, wait a minute, this is his brother. And totally different style of filmmaking.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So one other footnote, and people need to go watch the Close Encounters episode with you and Neil. One of the things that Neil said was, to relive the movie, I think he had magazines or books or whatever, and you pulled out a book, and I meant to pull out my Close Encounters of the Third Kind album, but that's how I relived movies, man. Vinyl, I would just sit it and play, and I, especially if the weather was nice, I'd open the windows, let a little breeze come in, just like before the aliens would arrive. Yeah, man.
Yeah. so the director's cut of Blade Runner, I remember the rumors of that in because this came out, I think I'd written it down, it was like 91 or something like that, I think. 91 on VHS. I saw that, so way before DVD, and it just sort of popped up in the video store that I was not working. I was trying to think when I started work there, so I hadn't started work there, but I would frequent that place and then end up working there. And so these VHSs of and I'm like, director's cuts, because director's cuts were kind of rare. We got the odd one, and I think this was probably before or around the time of the Aliens special edition, probably similar, I think, wasn't it, 91? And so they weren't like everywhere. And I'm like, what's in a director's cut? This is crazy. And I remember watching it, so I rented it, took it home, and I'm like, still not a huge fan, even though probably I had already seen the film 15 times over the years. But I'm like, I'll watch it again. Maybe I'll love it. It's okay. And I very quickly noticed that the voiceover had gone.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. And I have whole thoughts on the voiceover.
That was one of my next questions.
Yeah. And but other than that, I didn't really notice too many changes in it. And if you go through all the different versions of Blade Runner, there's not massive changes.
Yeah.
There's a couple, unicorns and all that sort of stuff. But other than that, if somebody said, right, tell me 10 changes between director's cut and theatrical, I'd probably struggle.
Yeah.
And even with the final cut and the theatrical cut, I would probably, again, still struggle to come up with a list of, even though there's like 100, there's lots. A lot of them are really subtle, like the removal of thunderclaps and all that sort of stuff from the soundtrack.
Right.
I listen to commentaries. I remember these things from last night. And so I wasn't massively blown away with the director's cut. I still preferred the theatrical one, I think. So what are your memories of the director's cut coming out? And were you a fan, or are you a fan?
I didn't miss the voiceover, but I don't remember that. I mean, I remember that being gone, but I don't remember that many other changes other than
the ending.
Well, and two, it's because that was where he and Rachel drove off into the sunset, right?
That's the theatrical one is the Sunset Drive, which uses outtakes from The Shining, which they got from Kubrick. Yeah, they got footage and they used that because they're like, this film doesn't end happily. We need a happy ending. So that got that. The director's cut got rid of that. So I think they just the elevator doors close, and I think that's pretty much it.
Dude, it's a nice mystery. Back in 1990, I went out and stayed 2 weeks with my cousin who lives in Beverly Hills, and went to the what is it, the Ampus, whatever. It was like the place that was like a library where you could go and tell them what script you wanted to read, and then you would have to read it there. You couldn't check it out because it was, the original scripts. And so reading Blade Runner, which I mean, like, I was excited to read what was originally kind of planned or whatever. And so the ending of that version of the script, Deckard took Rachel out of the city and into the sun, things that she had never experienced, and took her to the beach where she could, like, wow, this is great. And then he retired her on the beach.
No. Oops.
So yeah, I mean, I was like, wow, well, I see why that didn't fly, So at what point did you come to the conclusion that Deckard was a replicant?
I'm still not. I mean, I think probably when the sequel came out,
Yeah.
I was chatting to Annette about this earlier on, and she said, "Oh, is this? Oh, what are you watching? Blade Runner? Oh, is that the one where he's a replicant?" I'm like, he's a replicant because they sort of re-tinkered it for the final cut. That's what,
yeah.
I think the original versions were always like, there's an argument to go, yes, he is, and then you could get somebody who's like, I don't think he is, and nobody really knew, who was right and who was wrong. You could pretty much make your own mind up, I think. But with subsequent versions, they're like, yeah, he is.
Yeah. Ridley was interviewed and asked about that, and he said, "I thought it was obvious from the beginning that he was a replicant." And
did you think it was?
It probably by the second or third time I watched it, because I was watching the fine details. And there's a shot where Rachel is standing right in the doorway. Deckard walks by her, turns back around, so both their heads are in the frame, and their eyes are both lit the same. Where it's like
little dots.
Yeah. So at that point, I was like, man, I think that Deckard is a replicant. And then with the whole unicorn thing, and then there was one, and I can't find it now. I think it's somewhere on this, but anyway, but it was where Gaff, this is when he goes, like after Roy dies and the dove flies away. And then Gaff is over on the other building or something, and he's shouting at Deckard, and he says, you have done a man's job. You've done more than a man's job. And kind of implying that maybe he knew that Deckard was a replicant, which is really ironic when, he's given Rachel the Voight-Kampff test. And then Tyrell comes in and dismisses her. And he said, that took you longer than normal. Well, I'm paraphrasing. And Deckard leans in and he says, how does it not know what it is? And so, boom, man. So much coolness. And I like going back to that scene. I like the fact that there's the water effect, because I think Ridley and Tony both like weird effects that came from nothing, Yeah. And so the light kind of reflecting and twinkling and everything. Yeah, man, that was that shot was beyond beautiful. And then you've got the owl looking around, and he's got the same eyes, kind of glowing red.
And we know that the owl is obviously a replicant because it's very expensive.
Right.
And there's so much in that film. It's crazy. Every time I watch it, I don't know how many times I've seen it over the years, but it's easy. Well, it's obviously double figures, but I always see new things in it. And especially when you put a 4K, the film looks amazing in 4K. It's just
isn't it crazy stunning. How that and The Thing, when I saw that for the first time in 4K, and Rob Bottin's work, everything holds up. I mean, yes, you can see a couple of little fish lines, right? If you look hard, but I mean, overall, man, it is beautiful. And I'm sure Neil could tell you what type of film and what lens and all that stuff. But I mean, that matters. I mean, Neil and I were talking the other day about, I had one of my guitars, one of my new guitars set up. And I was telling the guy I have this old area Les Paul that I wanted to set up, and we got to talking, and he was saying that it's a classic, and I did the math, and I mean, like, it's over 50 years old.
Wow.
But I mean, that then ages me up. It's kind of like Jake's kids being teenagers, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Adoption.
I feel
he adopted them as teens. That's what happened.
That's right.
It's possible. That could have happened.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that could work. Yeah.
False memories
Right.
like unicorns, and you remember Jake's kids being small.
That's
No,
right.
you don't. False memories.
Yeah.
Somebody else's. Your niece's memories.
Right. Well, I remember the spider giving birth in the web behind the house. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
but it's like looking at the 4K thing. It's like, and I remember saying to Annette, I said, I'm sure somebody like Neil or yourself within 5 minutes could explain how they make a film from 40, 50 years ago look like that. But I kind of don't want to know it. But it just it blows my mind. It's like, how does the film from 1982 that was just shot on film, technology that we probably don't even use anymore, look this good? It's just crazy. I love the magic, and I don't know how it was done.
I think it was just extreme talent. I think there was no BS, because you would cut the movie together. You couldn't go into some app and go, okay, I'm going to make that face lighter and make the background darker, and I'm going to add a little more sheen here and whatever. You had to make sure that all that was in the lens when you shot it. And I think that we as filmmakers, probably not Neil, but I'm saying as far as I go, I mean, like, we all know what we can do in post. So we all, it's like, this is so near perfect, and I'll perfect it in post. And I hate it when people put that on me if I'm editing something for someone and they're like, oh yeah, it's trash, but they'll fix it in post. No, dude, don't it's, what is that from The Jerk? No shit from Shinola. That's important.
What's your favorite shot? Is there a particular? I mean, you mentioned one before with the lights and stuff. Have you got one that? I mean, it's quite hard to pick because it is a very long list. It's like the entire movie.
It really is, man. And everything was so fresh and new. And I mean, like, any shots of the city were phenomenal, but Deckard's apartment, the way it was laid out and everything. And it's funny, when he goes into I think it's the bathroom or the kitchen. I think it's the bathroom, and he turns on the light, and it's a fluorescent bulb, and it goes my grandparents had very similar fixtures in their bathroom, and so as a kid, that was just the sound. You pulled a little pulley chain. It wasn't even connected to a light switch, and it would flicker and hum and all that stuff. So there was a lot of familiarity in this version of this dystopian future. And I think another thing, like when he's looking at the photo, and it's just a flat photo, but he's zooming in, and then he's able to he's in the photo, so he can look around and go around a corner. And it was so ludicrous, but yet it was cool. But I mean, you have this technology, which is like, it feels light years in the future, but yet it's still so antiquated. The big frame and it was almost like in Star Wars, where, it's like almost there. They're going down the Death Star trench, and it's just lines, man. There's no precision in that. That's why Luke used the Force, dude. So anyway, yeah.
But it's also like in Alien, which is futuristic to us in the real world. But yet everything looks so used and old. And I think, with Blade Runner, with that weird monitor, where I wouldn't have seen anything in that photo. I'd be like, nope. So I wouldn't none of this. I wouldn't have got any of that zooming in, center left. Every time I listen to him giving the instructions, I'm like, I don't even understand what that means. Center, pullback, center. I'm like, what does that even mean? How does it go from that?
Right.
Even yesterday, I'm like, don't get it.
But so if there's a favorite scene, I suppose it would be the first time that Deckard meets Rachel in Tyrell's headquarters or whatever. It's just, but I mean, everything was so large, I mean, like, even when Roy goes and to meet his maker and crushes his head and all that stuff. I mean, like, even that living space was huge, man. And seemed like everything had prisms in it. I don't know, man, but the whole thing was just beautifully shot.
It's like Ridley. I was listening to some of the commentaries, and Ridley was talking about how he reused a lot of the props throughout the movies because it kept costs down. Even things like flipping pillars upside down. He's like, put it upside down. Brilliant. Now that works.
Yeah.
Because the level of detail. If you've watched any of the making of some pretty much any Ridley Scott film, like Gladiator or Exodus or anything, the amount of stuff you don't even register when you're watching it. He's paid attention to that when he's making the film, and it's insane. But I've got to go for the opening scene with the eyeball, with the pan of that whole. I think it probably lasts like 30 seconds or something. But every time I see that opening, I'm like, wow, this looks. How is this a 1982 film?
I
still don't understand it.
Yeah, very. There was one ad that I did for the company that I work for now. And I did this composite where there was this big eye and the flames were, reflected in it. And I knew where it came from. Nobody else did. They're like, that's clever. And I'm like, no, it's a copy, but okay. Yes, it's clever. I'll take that. So, so the one iconic item from Blade Runner that I wanted my own version of. And I don't know that I ever made one like Adam Savage did. And his first Blade Runner blaster, and he was working from, I think, a VHS. I mean, that and magazines and stuff. So there was so many shadows, and you're trying to create this pistol. But anyway, so finally, I can't remember. I've made notes, and now it's almost like I need a teleprompter, right?
I'm a bit like that. I have notes everywhere, and I've forgotten where some of the notes are. So
So this was my first Blade Runner blaster. It's all one piece resin, and then of course it has the amber handle. And it is wildly inaccurate, but yet I wanted it, and I saved up my money and bought it. And so the interesting thing is supposedly when they handed Harrison Ford the gun for the first time, he gripped it and said, it's just not long enough. I don't like, the handle's not long enough. So I don't know if this was loosely based on that one or not. But last year I kind of went on a tear and got 3 of these.
Wow.
And they're kits. And some of them were really, really, I think this is the one that was from Tip Top Toy, Tip Top something anyway, which is over in England, and it's a 3D resin print, but it has moving parts and stuff. But anyway, it went together pretty easily. And this one's probably the closest to what Deckard had in there. This one I painted best I could tell based on, photos and whatever else. This one is a little different. It's a different model.
How many have you got in total?
4.
Wow.
So this one, you can tell there's a difference in the grip, not just the color, but as far as like where the textures are and stuff. And but anyway, and this was a very rough 3D print. They always make it look great on Etsy. And then it came in, and I was like, man, was that one of the first 3D printers? Because it looks like trash. And then there's this one, which I just did it a different way. But this is one that I saw on Prop Store, and it said it was used. But I don't know, man. I don't recall seeing it, but that was kind of a fun one to put together. And I did a chrome effect on it so that it would anyway.
What's the difference? Why is the handle white on that and not red with the others?
Because they had one like this on prop store.
Right.
And 2, this was the crappiest looking handle. It wasn't made of like resin. Like these are really, really nice. You can see through them. And this one looked like trash. And I mean, like, it wasn't in any way transparent. It was like orange. I mean, it was just dumb. So I was like, when I found the version on Prop Store, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna copy that. But I was happy with the way this one turned out with the chrome.
They all look great.
Well, thanks, man. The let's see here. But like, for example, you see how this fits my hand.
Yeah.
The other one does not. And let's see here. That's not the one. Here's the one. So anyway, I mimicked what I found online, where you can see a difference between the black, and then it goes to this kind of a chrome or nickel or whatever. And I am assuming that is where they extended it so that Harrison Ford was happy.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because we don't want a grumpy Harrison Ford, do we?
No, man. We want it to fit his hand and make him happy, and yeah. So he doesn't sound like grumpy Batman, like they said in Shrinking. That was funny.
Exactly. I was also listening to the commentary, and Ridley was, oh wow, you got a badge.
And this
is from the original.
Supposedly Michelle got it for me for my birthday. I think it was last year. So anyway, thought I'd throw that one out there. Yeah.
So voiceover. There's been lots of stories about that over the year. Oh, Ridley was forced to do it. Apparently he wasn't. He was like, I wasn't forced to do it. I did it. Harrison Ford just did it, and he was grumpy and he was miserable. Apparently that's not true either.
I've seen the video, man.
Have you seen the video?
And whether maybe it was a spoof, but yeah, he was in the recording studio and he's doing those lines, and he's talking to whoever's recording it, and just like he's doing the lines, and then he's like, "This is the dumbest. Why? Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it was a spoof, and I believed it. I don't know. Maybe but I mean, like, it was very much a detective noir kind of old school, kind of thing. But I didn't feel like it was really necessary.
I think the voiceover, because I've been watched in the past day or two, a version with it and a version without it. I don't have a preference.
Yeah.
I think the film works without it. I think the film works with it. I don't think if you take the voiceover away, I don't think there's anything missing where you're like, I'm struggling to understand anything. I understood it all. And I think probably most people would, because it explains itself anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe in 1982, the audiences maybe needed a little bit more spoon feeding. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know,
to do now,
man. Yeah, I don't know. I think the only thing that removing it did was kind of amp up how dystopian this future was. It was rainy and dirty, and you weren't distracted by any words. And you really didn't know anything about Deckard, even when, he's eating at the cafe, right? Or the outdoor whatever, and Gaff comes up and starts speaking Spanish, English to him, or whatever it was.
City speak, they call that part. They're just like, no subtitles there. It was I was fine with it, but but so the voiceover, I'm like, I'm neither here nor there with the voiceover. The other myth over the years was that the unicorn dream sequence, which made an appearance in the director's cut and then a little bit longer in the final cut, that was from the other Ridley Scott film Legend. Not true. Not from Legend. It was shot specifically. I think it was shot by the second unit or whatever on Blade Runner. Shot by not Ridley, but somebody else. Not for Legend, but for Blade Runner. So
how did they attach the horn?
Maybe they did the Bill Murray Scrooge thing. Use staples, possibly. Have you tried staples? I don't know.
Little crazy glue, it doesn't have to stay on there longer than a couple of shots.
No, so. I mean, it was a few seconds in the director's cut. I think it was a little bit longer in the final cut. I kind of wish I'd have gone back and watched the final cut today or yesterday, just so that's a little bit fresher in my brain. But I'm good. I think twice in one day for one film is probably enough.
Yeah, man, definitely.
But with the director's cut, it's a shorter version, really, and I'm not a fan of. Oh, I'll watch a version that's got less in it. I've never quite seen the point of doing that.
I wonder if that's a Ridley Scott thing, because you remember the director's cut of Alien. Instead of that long, nice shot going through the Nostromo, he chopped that up, man. Yeah. But I mean, I liked being that fly in motion or whatever, and just seeing everything, like come back to life when Mother woke everybody up. So yeah.
Well, it's running times, right? So US theatrical 1 hour 52 35 seconds.
Wow.
International theatrical cut, we get 14 seconds more than you. No. So we get a little bit of extra violence, a little bit of extra eye gouging in the nostrils.
Right.
Harrison Ford's nose. The director's cut 1 hour 51 and 49.
Wow.
And then I didn't write down what the final cut one was because I didn't get to it. But it's interesting that we got like 14 seconds more than you did. So
that is, I mean, like what was the 14 seconds?
Violence. It was just a few seconds of violence. With some of the, some of the fight scenes and stuff like that. So nothing major. Nothing I don't think people would notice. They would now. They'd be like, but
right. Yeah. It's, and we're not talking about 2049 right now, but when we do, I can tell you what my favorite shot is. So we'll talk about that next time.
Does Blade Runner still hold up nowadays? I think yes.
Man. I mean, I think some movies are. It's just, you watch it, the story's told, it's like a book that you'll now pass off to somebody or just let it gather dust. I mean, but Blade Runner, you can watch it from so many different angles. And when it's, I know that Neil is a model maker as well, doing practical effects and stuff. And so rewatching, especially the 4K version, and looking at all those miniatures that they made. And have you ever seen the Millennium Falcon in that one shot of the city?
I'm always looking for it. And I don't know whether I've actually seen it. I know it's in there, and I have done for years. But it's part of a building with a walkway around it or something, isn't it? Which part of the movie is it? Is it near the beginning?
I think it's near the beginning.
Is it?
It's not something that I always pick up on. But I mean, it was pointed out to me, and I thought it was cool. But I think it's in a similar shot as what is in the poster that you gave me. That is right here in front of me. So but I mean, it was some shot like that, and the fact that 2049 had a bunch of practical effects that way too. It goes to show that you don't have to do it in CG. It's interesting watching, like the behind the scenes stuff for Blade Runner, and when Pris does she's running away from J.S. Sebastian and goes through the window, and then to find out that was real, that was not intended, and she slipped and fell through it.
Bleeding, but carried on doing the take.
Yeah, man, it's almost like DiCaprio and what was it, Django Unchained, where he cut his hand on the glass and it was bleeding all over the place. And I don't know how I would have felt as I can't remember the actress name. It's such a good actress, but anyway, him wiping his blood on me. I mean, like, talk about committed, So,
but Daryl Hannah, the casting for Blade Runner is great. Rutger Hauer especially. We're all familiar with him, from some of the Batman movie, Batman Begins and The Hitcher and Split Second and stuff. But back then, he was a big European star. Worked with Paul Verhoeven a few times, and then he shows up in Blade Runner with bleach blonde hair and stuff.
Yeah,
and it was surprising how much, or maybe not surprising, how much of his scenes or dialogue or actions were just improv'd by him.
Yeah,
he brought all this to it, and it really works well as Roy Batty. Apparently, when he was doing his Tears in Rain speech, everybody who was filming it was crying. They were all because they were so into it, because he came up with that, so they hadn't read it in the script. It's a really good book called Future Noir which is all about the making of Blade Runner. And the author of that is the guy who does the commentary on the work print. And he was on set.
Oh, wow, man.
For a whole bunch of days. And he's talking about that. He said, yeah, we were there and everybody was crying and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just,
But
special.
I think that's one of those, hidden messages that people overlook, is the fact that he came to terms with his mortality in that moment. And that's why he could say, relay his thoughts and how precious all those memories were and still are. It's kind of like when he told, and I can't remember the guy's name who was, I made those eyes, and
James Hong.
Yeah. And but when Roy's like, if you could see the things I've seen with your eyes, or whatever the line was, man, it was just a bunch of really, really cool stuff. It was very rock and roll, but it was just very even throughout the whole thing. When Roy was trying to make it fair with Deckard, even though it's still replicant to replicant. I don't know that Roy ever knew. I don't know that he knew who was chasing him. I think he just saw him as a man. But when Deckard like his arm is pulled through, the gun is taken away, breaks his finger, puts the gun back in his hand, and it's just he understood the part that he was to play as far as being hunted, and he knew that that his life had to end. But he was fortunate to have lasted long enough that it was on his terms, versus Pris and Leon, and I can't remember the other one that they retired. Zora. Yeah. But I mean, they didn't have a choice. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of cool stuff. Going back to Pris, we got a dog back, gosh, man, it was probably late 80s. No, it was early 90s. And her hair, she was a mutt, but her hair kind of looked like Pris's as far as, kind of big. And this dog would leap and do all these acrobatics and rolls and stuff. This was just a part of who the dog was. And so it was very easy to name her, and I named her Pris. And people would ask me, where did you come up with the name? And I'm like, dude, have you not seen Blade Runner? Come on.
They're like, no. What is this Blade Runner you speak of?
Right. Is it about a dog? No, it is not.
when did Blade Runner become a cult movie, though? Because we know it came out in 82, didn't make a fortune. Don't know what the reviews were like, whether they were very good or not. And then eventually, between then and certainly when the director's cut came out, because obviously there was a thirst for it, it became this cult classic that everybody loved and everybody then gravitated to. Do you remember that change, or did it just happen? You just wake up one morning, you're like, oh God, it's a classic now.
I guess I thought it was awesome to begin with, and so it's kind of like if you think you're drinking the best coffee, and then finally everybody else says, man, this really is some good coffee. You're like, of course, you know what I mean? And so I don't know that I don't know that I noticed when that happened. I think I noticed more when it's like my son, who is now 31, when he watched it, he thought it was good. When Emily, who is almost 30, when she watched it, then she said, that was good. It was a little slow. But then when Abby, who is 23 now, she was like, Dad, thank you so much for showing me what means so much to you. But that was slow. I never want to see it again. So
how many years ago? So Abby's 23 now. How many years ago was that viewing?
She was probably 16, 17, somewhere in there. Okay. So yeah, it's and I'm sure she hasn't watched it again
since and has no need to. So she's not going to run off and watch Blade Runner 2049 anytime soon.
Dude, and I mean 2049 was awesome, man.
Yeah, I like 2049.
Yeah.
It was good. I think it's probably the rentals from video stores, I would suspect. I think I remember the video box being in there. The foam type thing, the Warner ones. Not the hard shells, but I remember those. I would suspect it probably took off pretty quick, probably 83, 84, 85 onwards.
Hey, so you mentioned Force 10 from Navarone. When did that movie come out?
I will check for you. Let's have
because that was after Star Wars and
yes. I'm thinking 1980, but let's have a look.
But Harrison Ford was already
1978.
Really?
1978.
Wow, man.
Yep. Yeah, I would have thought it was maybe a couple. I probably didn't see it in 78. I would have seen it when it was on TV in like 1980 or something. So I would have, in my brain, it would have been after. That was been after Star Wars and Empire and stuff.
Yeah, that was one of the movies that I can't remember if it was my mom or dad took me to go see that. I think it was my mom. But anyway, when Ringo Starr's wife, whatever her name is, when she pops out of the bathtub or whatever to distract the guy, that was when my mom was like, wow, what did I take my son to go see? Of course, she took me to see Kramer versus Kramer, and there's a naked woman running through the through the hallway. So yeah, let's not feel too bad. So.
I remember in Force 10 there's a decapitation scene with a wire. Somebody as a truck or something. I remember thinking, this is the most violent thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's more violent than Halloween. It kind of freaked me out a little bit, but 1978.
Well, it kind of took place in the real world versus like a nightmare or a camp, you know?
Yeah. It did. Yeah. But yeah, so favorite scene, mine's the opening. I'll always gravitate towards that. I wish I could work out why I love that movie so much. It's not a simple answer. It's not like, well, this is why. It's just like, I don't know. I just do.
Yeah.
It's timeless. It looks great. The soundtrack's great. I have it on CD somewhere, as well as extended soundtracks and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I played the video game. Do you remember the PC game in 1997?
I never played it, man.
It was a point and click. Click thing. You had to fly with the spinner over to these buildings and find clues and all sorts of stuff. So I played that.
Yeah.
And then obviously we got sequels, and I didn't know there was these short films that I'd mentioned earlier.
Me either,
I haven't seen them yet, but I've tracked them down. But there's a whole big old world of extra Blade Runner stuff, and we're getting a Blade Runner TV series as well. So
really,
yep.
When is that coming out?
I think it's an Amazon thing, I believe. If you jump on the old Google and have a look, it'll give you. I think it might be a Blade Runner 2049 series.
Yeah,
but we are getting a live action Blade Runner TV series. So
wow, man. And that'll, it's kind of like Gears of War. They've been talking about doing a Netflix series for a long time. So hopefully Amazon will make it happen with their James Bond series.
Oh, don't even, I still don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But I do know how I feel about Blade Runner. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's, I guess if it weren't so huge and cumbersome and taking up table space, I would probably create my own Voight-Kampff machine. So,
is that the one prop that you would like from the movie?
I mean, it would be cool, especially if it worked. I mean, like with the bellows and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If I had the space, but I mean, if I had the space, I'd also like to have a full life-size 3PO and R2. So, I don't have that space right now. Yeah. So talk about the influence of Blade Runner. There's a band called Clutch, which is one of my favorite bands, and they've got there's tons of science fiction in all of their songs, but there's one song in particular called Red Alert. And I mean, like, the whole thing is about kind of from the viewpoint of a replicant. And Michelle just got home, so Jax is very excited. That, Lily, I'm sure she's up there, but so if you hear extra noise, that's why.
It's
Jax comes down and says, "Man, your woman's home," and then runs upstairs and says, "Your man's downstairs."
He's downstairs. He's still podcasting.
But if you get a chance, man, check that song out. If you need me to, toss it to you. But it's just fun, man. I like songs that don't take themselves too seriously. And then if it's like a Jax, let's hear.
I could see.
So there's Jax. Yeah.
Jax, you're a replicant.
Yeah, 85 pounds of replicant, man.
Yeah.
He would like to know what his life expectancy is, though. He thinks
infinite.
There's an incept date.
Infinite.
I don't know where he gets this.
There is no incept date.
Right.
So if we're going to do another film in the future along this caliber, any choices that you think, oh,
dude,
not necessarily next week or next time, but it's just for us to put in our brain and
Alien. Yeah, Alien is another one, and the original Superman, which that might be kind of cool to do closer to when James Gunn's Superman comes out.
Okay. I'm all for that. Superman the movie, yep, and we talk about the many different versions of that one as well.
Oh yeah, man.
So yeah,
awesome.
But I very much
childhood memories, man.
very much enjoyed taking a trip back to 1982.
Yeah, man.
When I first saw it, but
yeah. Well, it's nice being able to share my props because they are not on display in the main room. These are actually in my sound booth where I do my voiceover. So unless I open the door and invite somebody into the sound booth, no one sees them. So it's kind of cool.
But now, anybody who's watching this,
that's right,
has seen them.